Hey now, let's talk about Mario. Mario is easily the most iconic and recognizable video game character in existence. He's appeared in hundreds of games over a wide variety of consoles. There's been cartoons, a movie, all sorts of merchandise. It's fair to say that the video game character has completely co-opted the name Mario. What was once a fairly common Italian name is now forever associated with Nintendo's ubiquitous plumber. Mario is recognizable to pretty much everybody, even people who don't play video games. If you found someone who hasn't heard of Mario, you wouldn't really be wrong to ask them exactly what's wrong with them or what rock they've been living under for the past 25 years or so. He's more recognized these days than Mickey Mouse, and in a dazzling moment of, well, duh, he's recently appeared in the 2011 Guinness Book of World Records Gamers Edition as the greatest video game character of all time. But there are some people out there who think Mario isn't so great. As a matter of fact, some people have gone so far as to say Mario is a communist. Now, if you're shaking your head in disbelief, that's just a sign that you're normal, but I assure you, not only are there people who believe this, but they've come up with all sorts of quote-unquote evidence to back it up. If instead of shaking your head in disbelief you were going, "Of course, it all makes sense," then I think you're one of those people who will only believe something if it makes absolutely no sense at all. You might be saying, how could Mario be a communist? He's not even real. He's a fictional character in video games. But the idea is more that the Mario games are extremely subtle communist propaganda with the intent of getting the young, squishy minds of children all nice and prepared for the conversion to socialism. Now, before I even get into picking apart the so-called evidence for Mario's penchant for enforced collectivism, I want to point out that Mario comes from Japan. Japan is possibly the most capitalist place on Earth, one of the few countries that revere their men of industry rather than reviling them. And it's not like Mario was created by some left-leaning commie sympathizer who hates Japan's capitalistic leanings. He was created by Shigeru Miyamoto, a very wealthy man who practically defines the word Japanese businessman. I should also mention that Mario is Italian, and, well, you don't see a lot of Italian communists out there either. If you ever wondered why he's named Mario or why he's Italian at all, Mario is actually named after a real person, Mario Segali, a landlord who owned one of the buildings that Nintendo was located in. Well, okay then. So let's look at the evidence supporting Mario being a pinko and then stomp on these ideas like Goombas. The first and most obvious thing that people love to point out is Mario's color scheme. Most versions of the character wear red overalls and a red hat over a blue shirt. In some cases, such as the original Mario Brothers, the colors are reversed, and in Super Mario Brothers, Mario's shirt was brown rather than blue. When Mario is powered up as Fiery Mario, his overalls are usually changed to white, but his shirt becomes red. No matter what version of Mario you're looking at, and no matter what form he's in, the color red is always there. And it's become sort of the official color of Mario, just as the official color of his brother, the Eternal Player 2 known as Luigi, is green. Well, you ever hear the term that communists are reds? Yeah, that and the Soviet flag was red, and the other most prominent communist country, China, also uses a red flag. The color red is very associated with communism, but it doesn't take a genius to figure out that not everything red is associated with communism. The fact is, Mario wears overalls because it was created to show off the graphics of the original Donkey Kong. Miyamoto wanted Mario, or Jumpman as he was then called, to have a lot of animation for the time, and showing off the fact that his arms move as he walks was done by having his sleeves be a different color than the rest of him, hence overalls. Mario's red cap was created to avoid having to draw hair, and as a matter of fact, almost everything in Mario's design had to do with either showing off the graphics technology or hiding limitations of it. Mario's outfit in Super Mario Bros. Often gets a lot of attention, as he appears as red and brown rather than red and blue, giving him the appearance of the common worker that communists pander to. But this is the limitations of NES hardware at the time. Most video game sprites only used 3 colors, and in Mario's case it was the red, the brown, and the flesh tone. The brown was chosen instead of blue to make it stand out more against the game's backgrounds. Remember that prior to this, backgrounds in games are almost always black, which blue stands against nicely. But in this case, there was a variety of backgrounds, including the pale blue sky of most stages, as well as the deeper blue of the water stages. Not to mention that the brown matches Mario's hair exactly, so it draws on less colors. It wasn't until a bit later in the NES library when Mega Man came out and showed off a great-looking sprite using 5 colors instead of 3, and especially notable is the black outline around him, which became standard in sprite-based games. This would allow the character to use any number of colors without worrying about blending in too much with the backgrounds. The next thing most often pointed out by those who want to call Mario a communist is that he's called a hero of the people, saving the dull-witted and numerous denizens of the Mushroom Kingdom from an evil king, Bowser. The fact that Bowser is a king plays into the parallels to the Red Revolution that created Soviet Russia, where the Red Army overthrew the Tsar's White Army for control of Russia. But I might point out that Mario isn't overthrowing a monarchy so that the workers of the Mushroom Kingdom can live under the banner of enforced equality. Mario is not a revolutionary at all. Bowser is the revolutionary. Think about it. What's the most common enemy in Super Mario Bros.? Goombas, of course. They're the first enemy you meet, and they're everywhere. I think the only levels without Goombas are the underwater stages and few of the castle stages. That being said, what is a Goomba? A traitor to the Mushroom Kingdom who joined Bowser. Bowser is the guy riling up all the so-called underprivileged workers, the Goombas and the Turtles, and having them join his army, the Koopa Troop, to overthrow the current monarchy led by Princess Peach. Mario is, if anything, less of a communist revolutionary and more of a white knight, saving the princess from exploitative Koopa Troop and reinstating the monarchy at the end of each game. So I guess that really throws that idea out the window, eh? Another thing that people like to point out is that Mario looks a lot like Joseph Stalin. Mario doesn't fit the hero archetype. He's chubby, he wears work clothes, and he has a big old blue-collar mustache. The mustache is what draws people's attention to him looking like Stalin, but the fact is, the reason Mario has a mustache goes once again to the graphics. One of Mario's distinguishing features is his big nose. How do you show a character's big nose in a game with very primitive early 8-bit graphics? Think about it. If you remove Mario's mustache, his head looks big and round like Pac-Man. Pretty much most old video game characters of the era had big round heads, because the most simplistic way to draw a head was to simply draw a circle. So, how do you show off Mario's slightly more realistic features? Give him a mustache. The last thing I want to pick apart has to do with the flagpoles at the end of most levels of Super Mario Bros. 24 of the game's 32 stages are ended by touching the flagpole at the end of the stage. At this point, Mario slides down the flagpole, removing the current flag, then enters a castle. Upon entering the castle, a flag is raised on the roof of the castle itself, signifying victory. Another castle of the Mushroom Kingdom, recaptured from the Koopas. What people like to claim, however, is the design of the flags is suspect. The flag on the pole that Mario lowers resembles a peace sign, and the flag that Mario raises in the castle itself resembles the Star of Russia. Well, firstly, let's take a look at this peace sign. Firstly, people claim that this symbolizes Mario destroying the peaceful monarchy in favor of the more violent revolutionaries. Now, I already pointed out that Mario is not exactly fighting against monarchy, but I'd like to point out 2 things about this supposed peace sign. Firstly, the peace sign was originally created out of 2 letters, N and D, from the semaphore alphabet. Semaphore is an alphabet used by holding flags in certain directions to communicate. The N and the D together make the peace sign design. ND stands for nuclear disarmament. This symbol came about in 1958 to promote world peace by having the nuclear superpowers of the world, most notably the United States and the Soviet Russians, disarming their nukes. The peace sign became most commonly associated with the hippie movement of the 1960s. Now, allow me to point out the obvious. Where does the word communism come from? From the word commune. Where do hippies like to live? In a commune. So if Mario was the communist that some people claim him to be, he would be more likely putting up a peace sign, not removing one. The second thing I'd like to point out is that although it looks like a peace sign, it was never at all intended to be one. This just goes back to the idea of limited graphics. The green peace sign design is supposed to be a turtle shell. Remember, Koopa's are turtles, and Bowser is the big king turtle. So once again, Mario removing the flag is him getting rid of the radical revolutionary Koopas and reinstating the royal family as led by Peach. As for the star, well, stars are just a common thing in the Mushroom Kingdom, and as the hierarchy usually goes, mushroom, flower, star, it represents the most powerful item in the game, the Starman, which makes Mario invincible. The fact that it's red is pretty much not significant at all. If there's any significance to be found, it might be that the Japanese flag is also a very simple red symbol on a white background. There are other arguments to be had, but these have been the major ones that people like to point out. I'd love to say that it's all a joke and that people just trying to make Mario look like a communist to point out that you can do this to pretty much everything. But as I said, there's a lot of people out there who will believe only the most unbelievable things. And honestly, if you're enough of a geek to sit there and think about it and analyze it with logic like I have, then if anything, Mario is the most anti-communist character out there other than Strider. So, I think that pretty much settles that. Join me next time and we'll talk about how the internet is giving you the worst advice ever about fixing your Xbox.